right, let's jump straight in. Today, we're diving into a seriously fascinating explainer on how young children actually process and decode the world around them. We're talking about the heavy-duty cognitive gears that start turning way before a kid ever sets foot in a kindergarten classroom. So, if you're ready to completely rethink everything you thought you knew about early cognitive development, well, you're definitely in the right place. Now, for the longest time, there's been this popular myth, you've probably heard it, that preschoolers are just these passive, albeit sometimes sticky little sponges, right? Just soaking up facts and vocabulary without much internal logic. But the source material we're looking at today completely shatters that idea. No way. Instead, we really need to reframe these young minds as active little scientists. They aren't just absorbing things, they are constantly generating explanations, testing ideas against evidence, and literally revising their own internal theories when the world doesn't behave exactly as they expected. Moving on to Section 1, the myth of child's play. Let's look beyond just the sandbox. What's really wild here is how we have to redefine critical thinking for early childhood. It's not just some narrow set of isolated, grown-up skills somehow pushed down to toddlers. According to the research, early critical thinking is a holistic capacity. It's the whole shebang. It is deeply linked to their social-emotional growth, their language acquisition, and their emergent literacy. When kids are playing, they're actually testing ideas against evidence, considering multiple perspectives, and actively coordinating their thinking with their friends. Okay, Section 2, How Young Minds Reason. Let's peek under the hood at these internal mechanisms. So a really crucial point here is how children evaluate the stuff around them. You might think, young kids only care about what things look like, the surface appearances, or purely visual features. But research actually shows something super surprising. Kids heavily favor explanations grounded in internal causal mechanisms. Basically, they care about hidden properties and how things actually function. If a toy works differently than they expected it to, their explanation is going to lean on its function, not just its color or shape. They'll even redefine category boundaries based on shared functions. They are naturally, relentlessly seeking the why and the how right beneath the surface. In a real classroom, this internal reasoning shows up in super concrete ways. Educators are looking for specific, observable indicators of executive functioning. This means kids actively asking why or how come when an outcome totally contradicts what they thought they knew. It also looks like recalling two-step sequences, clearly articulating what an object does, and recognizing the true purpose of different tools or media. So these aren't just cute little behaviors, right? They are literally the fundamental building blocks of working memory and causal reasoning. On to Section 3, the power of dialogic spaces and how kids actually think together. Central to all of this is the concept of a dialogic space. Now, pulling from foundational psychologists like Vygotsky and Bakhtin, our source material emphasizes that knowledge is constructed socially. Dialogue doesn't just broadcast what a kid is already thinking. It actually physically shapes and expands their thinking in real time. A dialogic space is basically the social activity of thinking and acting together. It's where structured talk, guided by teachers or peers, takes a kid's prior knowledge and stretches it, forcing them to actively synthesize totally new ideas. And this brilliantly leads us to our next major concept, which is metacognition. And yes, you heard that right, even preschoolers use metacognition. It's simply the awareness of their own thought processes. By tapping into past experiences, these young learners can actually plan, monitor, and regulate their own learning. They use this self-awareness to adapt their problem-solving when task demands suddenly shift. Honestly, it's the engine driving self-regulated learning. So, how does this theory turn into actionable steps for teaching? Well, first, you externalize thinking. This means using visuals, concept maps, or physical objects to turn spoken ideas into shared items, which massively reduces the brain's cognitive load. Second, the children engage in exploratory talk, or what researchers call interthinking. That's when they jointly consider different perspectives to crack a problem. And third, this collaborative effort generates shared knowledge. Think about kids building a block tower that just keeps falling over. By externalizing the problem with the blocks, talking out loud about the structure, and adjusting it together, they are literally interthinking their way to a solution. Section 4, putting it into practice. Let's see what this looks like in daily classroom routines. The absolute key here is embedding these complex cognitive challenges right into intrinsically motivating play-based routines. Whether it's water play with measuring cups to test capacity, building in the sandbox, or open-ended art, kids are constantly proposing solutions and observing the results. Even simple-seeming activities like clapping patterns or sequencing beads are doing heavy lifting.
They reinforce the underlying neural pathways used later in algebraic thinking and rule-based reasoning. And the teachers are right there, scaffolding the whole thing by asking smart, predictive questions. One highly effective strategy educators use is called doubting and believing. Here's how it works. An adult listens to a kid's idea with genuine openness. They believe them, but then they deliberately challenge or question the idea to surface the child's underlying logic. It's like a constructive mini conflict. A teacher might lean in and say, okay, I hear that you think the heavy ball will float, but what if we actually test it? This gently pushes the child to articulate and justify their reasoning with physical evidence, which refines their causal theories. To support this kind of structured talk, teachers often use sentence strands. We're talking prompts like, my claim is because, which is supported by the evidence that. Now, I know that might sound a bit intense for little ones, but it is incredibly powerful. Providing these explicit frameworks helps all students, and especially multilingual learners or those with diverse needs, to articulate their reasoning clearly and really build up that early argument literacy. All right, Section 5, Debates and Cultural Controversies. Let's explore some differing views. Our source material neutrally reports on a pretty significant debate in the field right now. On one side, you have the inquiry-based focus, which pushes for early analysis, logic, and structured questioning. But on the flip side, there's the developmental domain focus. This camp argues that we absolutely must prioritize unstructured play, basic language acquisition, and social-emotional norms first. Critics of the heavy inquiry model caution that focusing too much on critical analysis might prematurely accelerate cognitive demands, and that could come at the expense of authentic, pure, play-based exploration. Breaking down these controversies a bit further, we really see three core concerns. First up is cultural bias. The push for debate and direct questioning might reflect very specific cultural assumptions, which could potentially marginalize other community ways of knowing. Second is measurement. Observing and grading a child's reasoning relies on subjective rubrics, and, that can easily lead to observational bias. And finally, adult influence. There is a real concern that adult discourse might accidentally impose adult norms onto kids rather than just capturing universal natural development. So it's a very delicate balancing act for educators to navigate. Section 6. The future of early learning. Where do we go from here? The consensus seems to point toward highly intentional, culturally responsive frameworks. Professional standards make it clear early childhood assessments should absolutely never be about rote bubble sheet testing. Instead, they have to inform instruction through authentic, unobtrusive observation. Tools like the Class Observational Framework are becoming absolutely vital here. They allow educators to monitor the quality of teacher-child interactions reliably and fairly, making sure that the critical thinking strategies being used are developmentally appropriate for every single kid in the room. Looking ahead, our explainer outlines a few vital directions for the future. First, we need more longitudinal studies to see exactly how these early skills translate into later academic success across all sorts of diverse contexts. Also, exploring parental at-home scaffolding is a total game changer. Connecting what happens at home with school practices ensures kids get consistent support. We also have to keep refining our observational rubrics to strip out bias. Ultimately, the goal is bridging this research with equitable policies, ensuring every diverse learner gets access to high-quality critical thinking experiences. And that brings us to our final thought for the day. We've seen that young children are incredibly capable of theory revision, deep causal reasoning, and collaborative problem solving, provided they have the right environment. So I want to leave you with this question. How can you cultivate a dialogic space to spark the little scientist in the children around you today? Because whether you're an educator, a parent, or just an engaged community member, the power to foster these vibrant, active minds starts directly with how we listen, how we question, and how we explore the world alongside them. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep asking those great questions.